Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, Phil Rosenberg, and the barrister and former Government Minister, Anna Soubry. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, The Guardian leads with concerns over the government's plans to give police greater powers to restrict protests. The paper also pictures the commemorations in Trafalgar Square to mark the second anniversary of the October the 7th attacks. Our guest Phil spoke at that event today and he'll be sharing more with us in a moment. The Times also leading on Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's comments that Jews are justified in asking for more from ministers. The Conservatives have said the PM must come clean over the collapse of the China spy case after the case against two men accused of passing secrets over to Beijing was dropped. That's on the front of the Telegraph. That story also on the front of the Mail. It says Keir Starmer's national security advisor could be questioned by MPs over the collapse of the case. The Eye paper has an exclusive report claiming Chancellor Rachel Reeves is considering higher taxes on banks to help fill a hole in the UK's public finances. Football pundit Gary Neville has called for unity in the face of rising tensions across the UK. The former England player accusing those behind the spate of flag flying across Britain of stoking division and hate. That story on the front of the Mirror. The Metro reports on the Prime Minister's bid to end agony for house buyers in situations where sellers pull out at the last minute because they've had a higher offer. The Daily Express leads on a pledge from the Tories to slash the £300 billion cost of welfare. While the FT looks at why the gold bullion market is enjoying a prosperous period. And we are joined tonight by Phil Rosenberg and Anna Soubry. Welcome to you both. Let's start with The Guardian, first of all, and this promise from the Home Secretary of new policing powers for protests. We hear from civil liberty groups who are expressing concern over these plans. Anna, take us into this story.
Yes, so because there have been continuing protests for goodness knows how many months now, on a regular basis, primarily by Palestine Action, which of course has been prescribed by the government as a terrorist group. It has caused, and I think Phil is a little bit more qualified to talk about this than I am, but I'm not Jewish. Perhaps I can, therefore, as an outsider almost, looking in on this, say there is undoubtedly, it has provoked a lot of fear amongst people who are Jewish. And actually, I think a lot of other people as well who don't subscribe to some of the things that have been said by Palestine Action, even though people like me may look on at what is happening in Gaza with complete horror. And so what Shabana Mahmood is looking at is changing the current Public Order Act so that our police, in certain circumstances where, for, if you like, the greater good or the greater security and peace and so on and so forth, when you've got persistent demonstrations, they can actually say, no, we're not allowing it because it takes so many resources away. And most notably, because of what happened in Manchester with the murder of two people, the deaths of one, the murder of another, at a time when our Jewish communities are under real and serious attack. And anti-Semitism is apparently, and I don't doubt it for one moment, the highest it's probably ever been.
Certainly in recent decades, yeah.
Yeah, the stats are showing...
Sorry, just finish off the Guardian story. Specifically, understandably, there will always be people who will look at the civil liberties, and I think we'd all agree that that is an important part of this, because we do have a right to peaceful protest in our country, something very dear to all our hearts. So it's going to be one of those questions, yet again, of getting the balance right between people's right to protest, but on the other hand, everybody's right in our country to live in peace and in safety.
Phil, what's your view on that line, which is the one put forward by civil liberty groups, that it's interfering with people's right to protest peacefully?
Well, this was something we asked the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary for when we met them on Friday in Manchester following that terrible terrorist attack that took the lives of Adrian Dalby and Melvin Kravitz. Because public order legislation was not designed with the idea that a protest would happen every week for 2 years. It was not designed with that in mind. And the impact of that has been community tensions, it's been an impact on shopping, on shopkeepers in city centres, and it's been an impact on police resources. And particularly now, when police said we need the resources to protect synagogues, particularly in light of that attack, please just hold back this weekend out of respect for what's happened. And these demonstrators said, no, we want to stretch the police resources thinner, perhaps allow another copycat attack. That just shows that this goes way against common decency, and there's a time to take action. Say the police should be given the power to think about cumulative impact when deciding when and how a protest can go ahead. It's important that people should have the right to say what's on their heart in public life, even if what they say is something I don't agree with or it's something that's unpopular. But there have to be limits and there have to be agreements about how we do that, how we express those disagreements in a way that's civilly responsible. And at the moment, unfortunately, some of those groups are not doing that.
And particularly in this instance, is it the timing that's particularly galling, because it came after the incident in Manchester where 2 lives were lost?
Absolutely. You know, to be honest, when Suella Braverman labelled these marches as hate marches, I cringed a bit because I said, you know, I may not agree with these marches, but many of the people on them have an absolute and understandable right to speak about what's happening in Gaza, and I understand that, and it's right that they should be able to do so.
And there are some Jewish people on
and there are some
protest marches.
But when they absolutely want to do so, when our community said, please, out of respect, just give us a little bit of time to grieve, the police say, please, we actually may not have the resources to do what we need to do following that terrorist attack. Just delay. Don't not have it, but delay it out of respect. And these people say, no, we're happy to stretch it. Then it begins to make you think, is this really about Palestine, or is it support for the terrorist act that's happened, or is it anti-Semitism? And at a certain point, you have to say, enough is enough.
Well, this comes as today there was the commemoration in Trafalgar Square of the October the 7th attacks at which you spoke, and we're just going to take a listen to what you had to say earlier today.
In the face of loss, our community remains steadfast, determined to defend Israel's right to exist in security and peace, and determined to confront anti-Semitism wherever it appears. That includes the despicable Palestine Action protests we've seen over these last days, almost gloating over the Yom Kippur attack. These are unacceptable and we demand change.
Phil, very emotional there. What is the change that you're demanding?
So we need to see a better settlement that allows for, yes, freedom of speech with civic responsibility. And so measures like considering cumulative impact, considering whether phrases like support globalise the intifada, call for violence effectively, which we're hearing on our streets, should be allowed. These things we think should not be allowed. Of course, people should feel free to protest for the Palestinian cause within the law, but some of the things that they're doing now incite violence in our view, and in certain cases cause such a strain on community relations and on police resources and on city centres that we think let's have a responsible balance. And that's what these new measures are looking at. So we've got to work through the details to make sure we keep that fine balance between freedom of speech and what we're looking to achieve in terms of safeguarding communities, keeping police resources there. But that's what we're hoping to achieve, and I think the government is taking that seriously now.
Anna, when people look at headlines like the Times front page, which we can swap to now, Mahmoud, police could get power to ban protest. Do you understand how they might be worried?
Yeah, but the police have that power anyway. I mean, we do police protesting, and quite properly so, because whilst we do have the right to protest, as I say, it's a balance. And remember we saw all of that with the climate protests that took place. And actually, because I remember I was in Parliament at the time, the disruption in London, because they were largely confined to those big protests to London, they had a huge impact on businesses because, well, they couldn't operate as businesses because of the scale of the protest and the nature of the protest, which for the first time actually closed off streets, prevented people going about their lawful business. So, as I say, it's all about balance. And, you know, if we actually put some respect and decency back into our politics and public discourse, frankly, we wouldn't be in this terrible mess. Because I agree with Phil. People are allowed to go out and protest about what the Israeli government is doing, just as they can go out and protest about what Hamas is doing. But it's when it steps into that, and I think it is a very clear territory where actually they're there to intimidate people that they don't agree with. That is unacceptable. Our law doesn't allow that. But in order to police it, it takes huge amounts of resources, frankly, at a time when our police don't have the resources they need. So it's about getting this right. And what we don't want, and I've got a lot of time for Shabina Mahmood because she's acted very quickly. I mean, she's a serious operator, this woman. And what we don't want is a knee-jerk reaction. So we don't want some of the bad laws. I'm speaking now as a barrister. We don't want some of the bad laws like the Dangerous Dogs Act, which Parliament did for understandable reasons, but then hugely backfired because it wasn't thought through, it wasn't properly done. So if we're going to change the law, we've got to do it properly. And that's why I've got to listen to all the different arguments and get it right.
Let's change subject to the Mirror now. And this is the common occurrence of a flag flying, that Gary Neville is saying that those behind the spate of flag flying across Britain are stoking division and hate in society. He says that, but we must point out that at the recent Labour Party conference, they were, flying flags as well, trying to reclaim the flag, I suppose.
I'm very proud of the Union flag. It's in our logo as the Board of Deputies, and I think it's right that we celebrate that. But I think I agree with Gary Neville to this extent. It's not the division flag, it's the Union flag, and we're not the divided kingdom, we're the United Kingdom. So let's work together to create that society that unites behind that flag, not where we use it to intimidate people of different communities. And that's particularly important, yes, after the synagogue attack that we had last week, but also the arson attack we saw at a mosque in Peacehaven just yesterday, which we've condemned. It's appalling. We don't want to see this kind of situation in this country, not a divided kingdom, a united kingdom.
But how do we move away from this flag flying being seen as divisive to being unifying?
I don't think the majority of the people in this country, I mean, I live in the East Midlands. I mean, I live near Loughborough and I work primarily in Lincoln. And there are flags around Lincoln. Actually, cities like Lincoln, towns like Loughborough have always put up the bunting on the right occasions to celebrate the country we are, or just to have, because it's a fete and you put up the Union Jack and whatever. I don't think the majority of people are saying, gosh, I feel suddenly terribly patriotic because the cross of St George is flying or the Union flag is flying. I think most people just look at it and think, what the frig's going on here? And who's going to pay for them when they all start to be blown away, as they were certainly on Friday when the winds were up. And I was driving back home from Lincoln and looking at all the flags and thought, I know it's going to be picking up the cost for that. It's the taxpayer. The reason the flags are going up primarily is not because people are actually trying to bring our country back together and unite us. The truth of it is they're stoking up trouble to satisfy their own political agenda, and I object to that. So I'm absolutely spot on, Gary Neville, and I'm also with Billy Bragg. If you're so minded, you can go to a website you set up, you can buy the cross of St George, and it's got printed on it, "Stop Hate," and then it says, this flag belongs to all of us, and it jolly well does. God, why can't we just all come together?
You've just done a great advert for Billy Bragg. I'm sure we can get
and I don't agree with you
elsewhere. Anna and Phil.
I don't think you can.
Anna and Phil, thank you very much for the moment. Coming up, we'll discuss this story on the front of the Daily Express. Its headline, Tories pledge to slash £300 billion cost of welfare. Do stay with us. Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
To the left, to the left.
I will always remember the atmosphere at the Shanghai protests. It was an electric mix of excitement, fear and defiance, and a sense that history was being made.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcasts.
We're trying to see as much as we can
We start with breaking news.
I am Anna Botting.
It's been quite some day.
The golden age of America begins right now.
A long-awaited ceasefire is now underway.
First question, Sky News.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
Describe this feeling. It's incredible.
Now to California.
The Democratic mayor of Los Angeles cut the fire department budget.
Do you owe citizens an apology? Have you nothing to say today?
Jane Secker, Sky News. Would you like to respond to us now?
I've never seen anything like this.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
In principle, would you agree to do that?
Criticism of you, the president, is banned. How is this a fair election?
Historic day here today.
The cameras are poised here, there, everywhere, waiting to see what the president might do next.
I gave you the A+ treatment. Thank you. Thank you all.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolution. And it's our job to try to make sense of it all. I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country. It's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's futures.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometres away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Phil Rosenberg and Anna Soubry. Let's take a look at the front page of the Express. Tory party conference is underway. We saw Kemi Badenoch's speech a little earlier. I won't ask you for your comment on that because that will take us into a whole other story. But what we're looking at with this is Mel Stride is making a promise to take a chainsaw to Britain's spiralling welfare bill. This is part of a £47 billion Tory savings drive. Anna.
I just looked at the time on my phone because I think it's quite interesting, this. We've had a lot of discussion earlier on, a lot of the front pages full of stories, but not very much about the Conservative Party conference, which, of course, I know it started today, but really gets underway tomorrow. But the Express does have a story about the Conservatives. I think the fact that there is so little coverage speaks volumes about the state that the party finds it in. But anyway, Mel Stride, who is the Shadow Chancellor, says that after 14 years in government, the Conservatives finally have come up a way to slash the welfare bill. We know that we have soaring costs of welfare. It's 300 billion. Actually, it's 47 billion pounds that they're going to somehow find in slashing the welfare bill. I'm not sure how he actually says they're going to achieve it, because it'll be exceptionally difficult to do it, but it undoubtedly has to be done. And it's a pity that the Labour backbenchers didn't support Keir Starmer's plans when they had that opportunity earlier.
That gives the Tories a reason to go for it even more, doesn't it?
Well, it absolutely does, because they make the point that neither Reform nor Labour, as it's currently been voting, is actually able and indeed willing to tackle welfare. And we've got to do it, because we simply can't afford to go on like this. And it's not just about the money, it's also about the lives of too many people who find themselves trapped in welfare when actually we need to get them back into work, or into work in the first place.
Phil, because we're running out of time, may we move to the Times and this story about Boris Johnson saying that he went too far, too fast on net zero when he was Prime Minister and was carried away by the notion that renewable energy sources could replace fossil fuels.
Yes, so he says that he maybe went too far and he got carried away. And we remember his ebullient speech at COP, was it 26 in Glasgow when he was Prime Minister. I think there was something about Kermit the Frog, if I remember rightly. But yes, not like Boris Johnson to change his mind or do a U-turn here. But yeah, so he's gone in a different direction. Perhaps the mood music from America and people being less excited about the net zero agenda. But at the end of the day, aren't we looking at trying to prevent these extreme weather events and giving a world that's inhabitable for future generations? Perhaps some people might argue they didn't get carried away enough.
Interesting that he's actually agreeing with Tony Blair.
I was going to say, to be fair...
Tony Blair was completely right. It's too expensive for ordinary people. It's too fast.
I mean, to be... Again, I can't believe I'm saying this. To be fair to Boris Johnson. But Tony Blair did start to say that move the argument in a different way by saying perhaps we have set some of these targets too high. But it is profoundly ironic that Boris Johnson, as you say, who championed the need to reduce our carbon emissions, now seems to be going in a different direction.
Phil, we've got about 20 seconds just to run us through the Metro story. Sir Keir Starmer's going to get tough on gazumpers.
Yes, so this is the situation where you think you're about to get your property of your dreams and suddenly it's snatched away from you. So this is an opportunity to find a way of making sure that people are on track as they think that they are.
Phil and Anna, we must leave it there. See you in the 11 o'clock hour.